Everyone, this is Rachel from Mini Ministry. I know I've been absent for a while, and my sincere apologies to you all. I am now doing ministry 5 days a week, and between the classes I teach for LifeWise Academy, the things I do at church, and just home life, it's been a little crazy. And unfortunately, something had to get put on the back burner, and that something was you, and I'm so sorry. However, I am back. I am starting to have a little more free time. We're near down to the end of the school year. And so I'm making a point to get back to you guys to complete the study and to keep doing things that I know brings God glory. We are going to be finishing up through Genesis. We're about halfway through right now. We're going to continue through our study of Genesis. And then through the summer months, I'm going to be doing a series of videos that answer some common questions. One thing I've learned about teaching through LifeWise Academy the past couple of years is that there are common questions through every age of kids that I've been teaching. And I think it's time that we put some of those out there for the world to hear so that they have a place to go to get answers. So that will be a big part of this end of spring and summer study, is answering some of those common questions that I hear in the classroom that I think even some of us adults kind of struggle with. So if you have your Bibles, let's grab them. We're going to open up to Genesis 28, and we're going to study several chapters today. And some of it's going to go a little fast because it kind of all squishes together, but it's really, really good, as all the Bible is. If you're driving or not, you can't get the Bible, that's okay. Don't want you to drive and read. That might be difficult. But then listen and read these later. It's always good to go back and actually read through it because we're not doing this line by line. We're doing this kind of thought by thought. And so I want to make sure that you get the whole context of everything. So make sure you go back and reread. We're going to be going through Genesis 28 through 33 today. Make sure you take time this week to go back and reread it to familiarize yourself with every part of the context of what we're going through for today. Okay. So we left off at the end of our last lesson that the blessing of the brothers Jacob and Esau took place, kind of the downfall of that, the hatred of these brothers goes deeper, and it makes perfect sense because, birthrights get sold and then the blessing gets changed, and it just unfortunately creates this weird dynamic between these two brothers. So Genesis 28 then picks up as Isaac's going to send Jacob away. He knows that these brothers are going to kill each other. That's what's going to happen. One's going to take the other's life. It's not going to be pretty. So we're going to save them. We're going to save them by separating them, which makes sense. If you have multiple children, you will totally understand that. Sometimes you have to separate them to keep the peace. And grown-ups are no different. Only sometimes it can be way worse because we might take it too far. So they send Jacob away with a warning about the kind of woman he needs to marry. Now, this is very important because back in that culture, we're not to intermix with certain categories of people, right? You want to keep your heritage pure and good. And so they give directions as to who to and to not marry. Meanwhile, Esau goes and gets married and is not a great choice to the parents. They're not very thrilled with that choice yet. They just take it because what are you going to do? Your kids are going to make decisions you don't always agree with, including the person they may marry. But we can try and give them advice and hope to steer them in the right direction. That's kind of our job of that. That's basically Genesis 28. It's pretty simple. Then Genesis 29. Sorry, don't forget Genesis 28. Back up a sec, right? Jacob's ladder, we hear that a lot. I think in Sunday school you might have heard about it. He sees these angels descending and ascending up on the ladder, and he falls asleep on a stone, has this vision. And God reiterates the Abrahamic promise to Jacob that this is going to happen. You're going to have descendants as numerous as stars, and just reminding him of that covenant. Okay. Then we jump in to Genesis 29. This is right here, one of the most crazy and fascinating things of Genesis. I'm serious, y'all. So here's what happens. Jacob moves and lives with his uncle Laban. Okay. And he works for him, and everything's flourishing because God is with Jacob. Things are going really, really well. Well, before he had gotten to Uncle Laban's house, he had gone into this well, and he sees this beautiful woman. Come to find out her name is Rachel. She is family of the family he is looking for, and he desires her because she is beautiful. He wants her. And he's like, she's just so beautiful. I really want to marry her. And so he makes a deal with Laban and says, work for me for 7 years for my daughter, Rachel. You will then have her hand. He's like, that sounds like a great deal. So he works, and he works really hard, and he works really well. He is an excellent worker. And he doesn't mind working for her because he's in love with her. And I think this is so beautiful. The fact that he's willing to work for 7 years just to have her hand in marriage. And think during the 7 years, he saw her day in and day out. He was going through the fields, and he would look over and see her, and they might catch each other's eye as they go back home. And all this time, she knows that he's working for her hand, and he knows what he's getting at the end of the 7 years. Might make your work a little different is if you knew the kind of person you go home to, which I think is exactly the point of marriage. You should work for then at the end of the workday, you get to go home to that person you want, right? That should be the desire. I sure hope that's my husband's desire, right? He comes home wanting his wife, desires to come home. My name's Rachel also, so that does help. So he works for the 7 years, and Laban is very thankful for his work. Nothing tells us that he's not a good worker. Everything seems to be going well. The wedding night comes. Y'all, this is where it gets crazy. The wedding night comes, and he's excited. Jacob's excited. He's waited 7 years for this moment. Now, just like when you get married, you have a veil over your face, and so you can't necessarily see the bride. And they wouldn't have kissed until the wedding night. That was customary. But here's what happens. Laban decides that he doesn't want to give Rachel away. Laban decides that Leah, who's actually the firstborn sister, the older sister, should be the one to go first because she is older, and that should be the order, and he wants to maintain that. Never says this to Jacob. Doesn't say this probably to a lot of people, but switches the sisters after the wedding. Okay? He switches them. He marries Leah, not knowing this, goes to bed with her, sleeps with her. In the morning, wakes up and looks over and goes, "Oh, you are not Rachel." Now, I got to tell you, I would be so upset at this moment. And it kind of makes me think of back, if you think COVID, 6 years ago. We're almost 6 years removed from COVID now. Praise God. But one of the big things was that everyone was wearing a mask and you couldn't see and you couldn't tell who anybody was. People were like, how can you not tell? Well, you couldn't see. And so when people say, how did he not know? I'm like, look at COVID. You couldn't see people, right? It was taking that to the 9th degree. He didn't know. There was a veil probably over her face. He had no clue that it was the other sister till the next morning. And after he had slept with her and consummated the marriage. And now, what do you do? And he goes to Laban and he is furious. And he's like, I worked 7 years to get your daughter's hand. And he's like, well, it's not customary, Jacob, to marry off the younger sister first. We always marry off the older. I would have came back and been like, you could have said that. You could have told me this 7 years ago and I could have made a decision. Which tells me that Laban's kind of a schemer a little bit because he didn't tell him. There was no foreknowledge given here of any of this. He had plenty of time. I think he just wanted the free work. Well, he's like, I still want Rachel. That's the whole point of work. And he goes, well, work for me for 7 more years and you can have Rachel. And he does it. Now, a week later, he gives Rachel to him. So he doesn't have to wait the 7 years. But he then works 7 more years. He worked a total of 14 years, y'all, just to have Rachel's hand in marriage. I get love and attraction, but I don't know of any man that would work for that much time simply to have the privilege to marry her. That is insane to me. And it was probably more acceptable back then than what it would be now. To us, it seems like an extremely foreign concept. It seems insane. Now, the 7 years, I mean, he agreed to that. That in itself is crazy. But then after all of this falls apart, he has to work another 7 years in agreement, which Laban clearly wants him as a worker in his field, a worker in his household, because he does good work. And so he's like, tell you what, give me 7 more years. I mean, he could have said no, but he doesn't because he wants to marry Rachel. So he works for Laban, and it all works out. He gets multiple wives. I don't think that was his intention. He initially only wanted Rachel, but now he has 2 wives, and he is now married to both. Okay. Well, Leah begins to have children, but Rachel is barren. Now, back then, if you were barren, that meant that you had sin in your life or God wasn't favored upon you or a myriad of a lot of things. It was a negative. It was a huge negative if you didn't have children. You were looked down upon by the other women even by the men, because they wanted to carry on their family name, and you only do that by having children. So you can see how this is problematic. Not to mention the fact that he loves Rachel. So the fact that Rachel's not conceiving, Leah's probably like, look at that. I was the one and I'm having kids and she's not. I'm sure there was a lot of jealousy and animosity between these two sisters. I'm sure it was not pretty. Okay. Then we go to Genesis 30. And Rachel continues longing for children. She envies Leah. And Jacob gets mad. Jacob's like, aren't I enough? Isn't it good enough that you have me as your husband? Why do you have to be fulfilled by children? And I think this is an absolutely beautiful statement. I think we need to hear this more now in our current day and age. I know of women within my congregation, where I go to church at, that they're not conceiving children, and they treat it like it is an end all of everything. I get the desire to have children is so strong because we are made for that. It's in our DNA as women to want to have children and to care for them and to do all of that. But Jacob makes this beautiful point. I am still your husband. Aren't I enough? Yeah, you may not be having kids, but you have me. Don't forget, ladies, the man in front of you. Don't forget the husband you've been given. Don't forget that blessing. Just because you're not given the gift of having a child, don't forget the gift of the marriage that you have. That's really important. I think we really need to talk about that more these days and age. So eventually, the womb's open, right? Rachel does end up having children. And then they actually they go through a period of time where one has kids, the other one stops having kids, and they give their handmaidens to them, to Jacob, to wives. Now he has 4 wives. And between all of these women, his 4 wives, come the 12 tribes of Israel. This is really super important, so take note. So these are the tribes that are going to make Israel. And that's really important. So Jacob does all this. He then decides that it's time to leave because it's getting too much. He's got all this family. He's got all these wives. All these children have now come. It's time for him to go. And he has served his time to his uncle. He has done all the work that was asked for him. There's this whole little thing with sheep, and like, if you get this many good of the goats, and I think it's the goats, and the striped and spotted ones, and there's a whole thing just to prove to him that God is with him. And so there's a whole thing about that. Read it. It's kind of hilarious. But Jacob wants to go. Jacob's ready to go. In Genesis 31, then, the Lord calls Jacob to return home. He has decided that it is time. It is time for you to go. And he talks to his wives because this is their homeland. This is where they're from. And he's like, I can't stay here any longer. He is not giving me fair wages. He is not treating me with respect. I do all this work for him, and yet I don't feel favored. I see no point in continuing here. And the wives agree. Okay, we're going to trust you. We will go with you. So Jacob flees with his family. Laban, say it however you want. I don't think God gets mad when we don't say biblical names correctly, by the way. Maybe in heaven we'll learn them, but it's okay if you don't get them correct. Laban then hunts him down, and a long discussion ensues because he's really wanting his workforce to stay there. He's gotten used to Jacob and his work ethic, Jacob and all that he does. And now Jacob's like, I've had enough. I've been working for you for so long. No one likes to work and feel underappreciated. No one likes to work and feel like they're taken advantage of. And I think that's what happened with Jacob. I think he felt taken advantage of by Laban because he just kept, just work with me longer. Just do this. He just kept stretching it out, but never really appreciating all that he was doing. And Jacob had just had enough, and he wanted to take his family, and he wanted to begin his family tree the way he wanted it to happen, which makes perfect sense. You can't blame the guy for that. I mean, he has gone through a lot. Now, Laban is mad because he's like, you were just going to take my family and get out of here. What about my kids? Can I say goodbye to my grandkids? And that's a fair statement. But you have to remember that Jacob was just doing what he saw was right for his family. He wasn't doing it necessarily, I don't think, to hurt Laban. He wasn't doing it to be overly crazy by any means. He was just doing what was best for him and his family. Interestingly enough, that through all of this, you never hear of I mean, Laban wants him to come back, but it's never, you're such a good worker. I would love to have you on my team. You never hear this. And I think that's why I say he just wanted him for the workforce. He didn't really care for him the way he meant to. But naturally, as Jacob flees to go back home, the question becomes is what are you going back home to? After this time, I think it's been, I didn't write this down. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I think it's been like 20 years since he left home. Okay. 20 years of time has passed, more or less. And he's not going to go back home. He doesn't know if his brother is still alive. He doesn't know what the state of his family. I mean, somebody could have came and brought word. That's very possible. But he doesn't know. The last time he left home, his brother wanted to kill him and take his life. His brother had enough from him, and his parents told him to flee. Would you want to go back home to that? I mean, that would be a little terrifying. Genesis 32 and 33 answers those questions. As Jacob begins to near home, he sends messengers ahead to Esau. He sends people ahead to say, hey, your brother is coming. Your brother Jacob, the one you haven't seen in 20 years. Okay? He says Esau is coming, and so the messengers come back to Jacob and says, Esau is coming to meet you, and he has 400 men. Now, at this point, you would be absolutely astounded. Because remember, this guy, y'all were going to kill each other is probably what would have happened. Someone was going to end up dead. And now your brother's coming with 400 men. And it has to be going through Jacob's mind. Does he still want to kill me? Are we still going to resolve what 20 years ago the conflict was? Is he still mad at me? Are we still going to hash up what has been done long before? All these things have to be going through his mind. I know they'd be going through mine. So Jacob is smart. He decides to divide all of his stuff into two camps. So he takes some of his wives and stuff and, hey, you go over here so that you're safe. And the rest of you go over here so you'll be safe. And he puts Rachel at the very back of the camp to keep her safe. Because remember, she's the one he's very fond of. And he separates all of them. Okay? And then he sends gifts ahead to Esau. Here's the thing. It's gifts, but I think it's really a bribe. That's the way I take this when I read Genesis 32. He's bribing his brother, for one, to forgive him, I think. To forget what has happened, to forgive him, but also to see that, hey, look, things are well for me. Here, take some goats, take some sheep, take some oxen, take some food, take all this stuff as an offering, as a way of saying it's okay. We can still be brotherly, we can be friendly, it's perfectly fine. Now, a bribe is understandable because he thought he would, he's got 400 men heading towards him with his brother who wanted to kill him. A bribe makes perfect sense. But it's interesting because his brother doesn't really want the bribe. He's like, interesting, right? Jacob then that night, as they camp and they're waiting to then go meet his brother the next day, gets into this very interesting tassel. I'm going to use that word, tassel? Sure. And his hip gets thrown out of socket because he gets in a wrestling match with a man. Now, this mysterious entity, we don't exactly know. Is it an angel? Is it a type of Christ or Christology? We're not 100% sure what messenger of God this is, but it is someone who's clearly working for God. His hip gets thrown out of socket, which I find fascinating that he's injured, so to speak. And this mysterious entity then blesses him and changes his name to Israel because he wrestled with God and won. Okay? And he blesses him. Your name is now not just going to be Jacob, it's going to be Israel. And this is very important. When God changes somebody's name, very important things happen. He only does it a couple of times, right? He did it with Abraham. He becomes Abraham, and Sarai becomes Sarah. And we see later, like in the New Testament, right? And Saul becomes Paul. Things of that nature, because something catastrophic happens. He takes Jacob and he changes his name to Israel because Israel is going to be the people. They're going to be the people of Israel. This is important. This is the changing of the tides in biblical history because now it's not just about, yes, it's the world, but God's going to make a people for himself, and you are going to be part of that. You are Israel. You are going to lead them. That's got to be overwhelming. for Jacob. I don't know that he really grasped all of that when this happened, but it's got to be cool to be changed your name by a messenger of God, God himself. Maybe he even thought that's pretty cool. I like that. Also, it never tells us that his hip goes back into socket. So I have to wonder if the rest of his life he kind of had this disability, so to speak. And every time it bothered him, he was just like, oh, that's the time I wrestled with God, right? That's the time that God changed my name. And it was a reminder. I don't know. Things I wonder. Chapter 33 then goes through, and Jacob and Esau meet and they reunite, and the brothers find each other again, and they hug and they welcome each other back, and it is good. This has been 20 years of quiet to Esau. Not seeing his brother, but now they're reconciled, and he welcomes him back home, and they forgive one another, and they love one another. And I'm sure Esau sees the wives and the children and all the oxen, realizes his brother's made a whole life for himself. He didn't just wander off into nothingness. He created an entire world for him and his family. And now he gets to be a part of that. And that has to be one of the most beautiful reunions because it has been time. And it also just goes to show you that time heals wounds. The 20 years have passed. The anger has subsided. And after a while, you realize that being angry with that person isn't the most important thing. That person is the most important thing. Jacob and Esau knew that. And they reunite, and it becomes really a tale of brothers who just forgive and sort of forget. And it's really, really beautiful. And I think it's something we just don't really talk about often enough. It's really important. Really is. Okay? That is the scope of today's lesson. We compacted multiple chapters really quick there because honestly, it's all one big account. Jacob and Esau and all that is happening is important. But some of this can be compiled together for the ease of discussion, and it's really cool to see. Now, when we come back in hopefully just a couple weeks, it won't be that long, okay? We're going to get into the other child, which is they do have a sister named Dinah, and we are going to be getting into the scope of what happens to her and the fallout of because of what happens to her and how that changes a lot of things, and then preparing us for what's coming next. It's amazing because without the 12 tribes, you don't set up the Israelites, you don't set up the Israel nation, as it were, back then. And you don't have all of this. And so everything's resting on this. God said he would give him descendants as numerous as the stars. These 12 are just the beginning. I highly, highly encourage you this week, read Genesis 28 through 33 and immerse yourself in the Word. You should be in the Word every day. I talk to you guys about this all the time. Be in the Word every day. But sometimes when we sit, it's good to take like-minded chapters and put them together because then we're getting a bigger picture. That's what I try to do, is put the chapters that kind of feel like they should be squished together to give you a greater understanding of the overall picture of what is happening, the bigger picture of the truth of God's Word. I hope you enjoyed this. I can't wait to see you next time. I hope you have a great day, and to God be the glory.